The Cryonics Institute, in a nutshell, is a organization that was formed in the 1970s. Actually, the concept or ideal of cryonics has been around for forever, preserving people for future technology or spiritual or whatever to wake them up, going back to the Egyptian pyramids and the pharaohs and everything. But it wasn't until the 1960s that we really started looking at it from a scientific perspective. We had a physics professor. His name was Robert Ettinger, and he was in a severe accident in World War II. He was actually a artillery officer in the Battle of the Bulge. He was hit by German artillery, and it severed his feet. And they were able to save and reattach his feet through bone grafting, which was cutting edge new technology back then. And that got him kind of like thinking, oh my God, that was impossible just a couple of years ago. And now look what they're doing. And, where is this going to take us, is where it's going to lead to. And he was an avid fan of science fiction. He used to read Asimov in the 1950s post-war. And he became a physics professor, and he started looking into the idea, is this possible to actually store people in any way, fashion, or shape that we can keep them stabilized, even though if we can't bring them back now, what about in the future? Because, so many things that are impossible today or yesterday are possible tomorrow, right? I mean, 100 years ago, if you died, your heart would stop, and that was it, but today we routinely shock people with cardiac defibrillation, use CPR, and we do bring people back. And the same goes for like organ transplants. Could you imagine trying to describe 50, 60 years ago, removing a heart or a liver out of a cadaver and stitching and sewing it into another person and then going on to live for another 34 years? They'd say that sounds a lot like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. But yet today, again, we routinely do that. People's grandmothers and sisters and brothers are alive because of these technologies that even our phone, like 20, 30 years ago, to say that I'm going to have access to all the knowledge of humankind at my fingertips and be able to communicate with people on the other side of the planet in real time, that sounds kind of like a crystal ball. But again, now it's routine. So many of these things that are impossible are going to be possible into the future. I don't think we're at the zenith of our knowledge. And he had good foresight. He understood this. Yeah, we can't bring people back today in the 1960s, or even now today in the 2025. We can't take a person who's cryogenically preserved and bring them back yet. The difference between something being completely impossible and something being very, very possible in the realm of reality often is what can be demonstrated in nature. So if you and I were saying, arguing whether there was going to be heavier than air flight in the 1500s, maybe with Da Vinci or whatever, it might sound crazy because we don't have combustion engines, we don't have lightweight aluminum materials, but we do have birds that fly over your head. So it's to some degree reverse engineering aerodynamics of nature, right? So again, in nature, there's all kinds of examples of insects and animals that can freeze even solid and be brought back and or stabilized for thousands of years. In fact, today we can actually take human embryos and freeze them down and put them into a surrogate mother 100 years later. We could do that right now with today's crude technology. We can also clone people. We can also take your older cells of your arm, right, that are already differentiated, and turn them into undifferentiated stem cells that could be grown into almost any part of you, and those are your cells. So it's not even an organ transplant from someone else. Those are your cells that can be repaired, replaced, and, even if some of your cells are dead, they can be replaced. So that's what we can do today. Imagine where we're heading in the future. So using that whole premise, I'm sorry if I'm taking a long time to get there. That whole premise says, can we stabilize people now? Relatively safely, can we stabilize people? Yes, we can. And can we stabilize them far into the future at liquid nitrogen temperatures? Yes, we can. The $1 million question is, will we be able to bring them back? And that depends on the future. Will we have a hospital? We don't pretend to be the hospital of the future. We're the ambulance ride to that future hospital, should that exist someday. And so we're optimistic that the future won't be dystopian, that it will be much more advanced and maybe not utopian, but it won't be dystopian either. It'll just be the future. We'll probably have technologies that allow us to do things that we can't even imagine, but we'll probably have other problems, that we can't imagine either. So, that being said, when I think about all of the things that I've built up in my life, my wealth and all the successes that I've had, I would give everything I own, everything, every penny, to bring back the people I love around me, right? My mom and dad who I've lost, and aunts and uncles and friends that maybe left this world too early. I mean, that's the real connection. That's the real meaning of life, is, right, the people around us. And so this is a chance at that. And Cryonics is a chance, however slim it may be. It could be 1%, could be greater than 50%. I happen to think with time, it's greater than 50%. And so that's what we do.